Hi guys, this is MikeB the Game Genie, and I've officially hit the halfway point in my complete NES collection, so I thought it'd be a fun idea to show you everything I have in my collection up to this date. So guys, this is a shelf you don't normally see because it's usually on the other side of my camera when I'm recording. But this is where I in fact keep most of my NES game boxes, as well as you can see some Game Boy Advance boxes there as well, and some regular Game Boy games. So anyways, let me pull these games out and we'll take a look to see what I have in box. So I have exactly 34 box Nintendo games. Now, I'm not going to be the cool person to say that all the games are in these cases, because I've actually got some pretty rare stuff, like Mighty Final Fight in box. But I only have one Mighty Final Fight, so obviously it's over on the shelf. Now, I'm not really a boxed NES collector. I've just managed to pick up some as I've gone along. Usually when you pick up a Nintendo game and it's in box, they'll try to sell it to you for full price, and then you say, well, how much do you want for it without the box? And it's only $1 or $2 off, so it's not really worth not getting the box. So I'll usually just pick them up. There's only actually a few games here that I absolutely had to have in box, and those are predominantly the Mario Brothers series, specifically Mario Brothers 2, because it was the first NES game I ever had, and I really wanted to recapture that memory of having the original box. Out of this set, there are actually 3 games that I've had in box ever since I was a kid, but only one of them was an actual game I owned. I've always had the box to the original Mario Brothers and to WrestleMania. However, I never had either game growing up. However, I did have the original box to NERC, and as most people know, NERC is not my favorite game, so I don't know why in God's name I would have kept just the NERC box out of the original 15 or 16 Nintendo games I had as a kid. Blows me away. How do I keep NERC over Mega Man 2? Another game I'm really excited to have in box, specifically it's because of where it came from. Actually, my dad picked it up for me. When I first started collecting for the NES again, I told my father about it, and he actually went out to a local thrift store, the Salvation Army, and he called me and he said he got this great deal, and I said, oh yeah, sure, I'm sure you did. But it turns out he actually got a complete in-box copy of the original Final Fantasy for $3 in a lot of games that he paid like $25 for that came with 10 games. But I can't believe I actually have a copy of Final Fantasy complete in box, which is really special to me because later in life I became a huge fan of the Final Fantasy series. Another thing I'm really addicted to collecting is box Nintendo systems. And it's the one system growing up as a kid that I had that I never kept the boxes for. So now in my adult years, I'm very excited whenever I come across a box set. The very first box I ever picked up was the action set, and I didn't actually have an action set growing up. But it's cool to actually have one now, complete with Mario and Duck Hunt, one of the rarest games for the Nintendo Entertainment System. But the action set was really cool, and it's predominantly what all my friends had. I, on the other hand, had the control deck, which was your basic standard system. It was the system just with 2 controllers, no games, nothing. And that's what I got for my, I believe it was my 8th birthday. But I never kept that box. I was lucky enough that later on in life, I found a really, really good copy of the box on eBay, and I just absolutely had to have it, so I picked it up, and I paid like $60 for it, but can't tell you how excited I am to have my original Nintendo box back in my collection. Last but not least is my beloved top loader. I actually have 2 top loaders. The second one I picked up in a bundle of games. The top loader was just a throw-in, and I really wanted the bundle of games. It was at a good price, so I ended up with my second top loader. But I actually never even used the top loader because the top loader doesn't really work well with the TVs, and you usually have the jailbears going across. However, it's a really cool piece, and I'm very excited to have my top loader, which is actually brand new and sealed, and still has all the plastic wrap around the original manual and controllers inside. But that's not what you guys really came to see. You came here to see the 400 plus games I have currently in my NES collection. Let's get on to the main event. As you can tell, I have quite a few games for the Nintendo Entertainment System, so it'll be relatively impossible for me to basically list every single game I have. So what I'll do is, I'll basically go through a look at the games I have, row by row, and I'll point out the ones I think are truly special or unique to me. Of course, I have my games listed alphabetically, so the very first row starts with the numbered games. Of course, you have 10-Yard Fight, 1942, 1943, 720, 8 Eyes. The 1942 and 43 games I think are pretty unique. I enjoy those, but not really my favorites. You've got Boy in This Blob, which is a game that a lot of people like, but I haven't really explored. Next to that, you have A Nightmare on Elm Street. I absolutely love A Nightmare on Elm Street. I know it's an LJN game. I know it's not supposed to be really good, but I actually really enjoy it. Right over and then you'll see a game called Air Fortress. This was a bargain game my mom picked up when we were kids, and I've had ever since then. It's the only shooter I had growing up, and while not a great game, it's fun to actually pick up and play because of when I had it when I was younger. The second row continues along with the A's and gets into the B's. First you have Airwolf, which was just an awful show growing up, and it's not that much better than the game. A little bit over than that you have Amagon. Amagon, actually, it's not a terrible game, but it's not one I absolutely love. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, that's not a very common game. Back to the Future 1, a game I like. Back to the Future Parts 2 and 3, a game I absolutely despise. A little bit over than that, you got Balloon Fight, which, you know what, that's not an unfun game. I really like Balloon Fight. Of course, it's Black Box. Oh yeah, down in row 3, we start getting into some really fun stuff. Of course, just a little bit over, you've got Batman. Sunsoft Batman is just a fantastic game, and one of the first movie license games I remember renting and playing as a kid and thought it was absolutely fantastic. I love Sunsoft Batman. Just over from that, you also have Battletoads. Game that was so hyped when we were kids. I mean, it was so similar to Ninja Turtles. Everybody had to get a copy of Battletoads, and it was really hard. I mean, still to this day, I can't get past the jumper stage. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're not much of a game genie if you can't beat the jumper stage, but man, it's really hard, and I have a lot of really hard time with it. Then, of course, I've got my first unlicensed game, which is Bible Adventures. Oh, Bible Adventures is fun. And right at the end of the corner, you've got Blades of Steel. One of the absolute best sports games on the system. Here's where we get into some really fun stuff. Blaster Master is a game that has some fantastic music. Haven't played a whole lot of it so far. I know it's on a lot of people's top 10 lists. It's a real shame I haven't, but one I intend to put some more time into soon. Then over from that, you've got the absolutely brilliant Bucky O'Hare. How this game isn't more expensive and considered to be more of a hidden gem, I'll never know. Bucky O'Hare is amazing. Then at the end, you've got NES Royalty, the Castlevania games. Right there, Castlevania and Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. Of course, you've got Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, right at the beginning. Just over from that, you have Rescue Rangers 1, and a game a lot of people don't have in their collection, Rescue Rangers 2. One I'm just so excited to have. It's amazing that I picked it up, and I'm glad I have it. Over from that, you've got Clash of Demon Head, as we all know, is another underrated gem. And then, of course, you've got the Big C, another Konami great, Contra. I love that game. Right next to it is a game called Crystalis. It's a game I always wanted as a kid, but I've never picked up. I've picked it up now, but I haven't really put a lot of time into it. But it's an SNK kind of role-playing game. I'm very excited to actually have a chance to finally play it. I know my friend Weekend Game Guy, he really likes Crystalis, and a lot of other people do too. On down to the D's. First off, you've got Darkman. Not a great game, and really a very weird movie adaptation. Darkman is not the kind of thing you think a kid would get behind, but of course, Licensing Machine decided they were going to make a Darkman game. Then over from that, you've got Destiny of an Emperor, which is a very uncommon game, and as you saw earlier, one I have in box. And then you've got my very meager Donkey Kong collection, with the surprisingly pricey Donkey Kong Jr. Math. The game is terrible, so I have no idea why it commands such a high price, but anyways, Donkey Kong Jr. Math. Then right at the end, you've got Double Dragon. Then you've got Double Dragon 2, a game I absolutely loved growing up. A little over from that, you've got Dragon Warrior 1, 2, and 4. Still haven't found a copy of Dragon Warrior 3 yet, but I'm still looking. Actually, I don't think I've showed you guys Dragon Warrior 4 yet. Well, that'll be a spoiler for my next NES Complete Collection Chronicles. You've got the individual Duck Hunt, which I'm sure a lot of people don't have unless they have one of the earlier systems. Maybe, I know the first Rob system actually came with a standalone Duck Hunt, but I was excited to add that. And then right next to that, you've got one of my absolute all-time favorite games, DuckTales. Wow, this is actually taking forever. I hope you guys aren't bored yet. Anyways, let's keep going. Then you have the F games. We start out with a game like Foxanadu, or Faxanadu. Never really know how to say that one correctly. You've also got a game like Fester's Quest, which I actually really enjoy. I don't think Fester's Quest is all that bad. I enjoy playing it. I just do find it extremely hard and confusing on where to go. Next to that, of course, is Final Fantasy, which was the start of so many games I loved playing growing up. A little over from that, you've got an interesting shooter game called Freedom Force that I had never heard about, but one of my good friends, Steve, actually had growing up and told me I absolutely had to try. Then you got a game that will absolutely plague me for the rest of my life, Friday the 13th. As most of you know, one of my old video game nostalgia episodes, I actually rented Friday the 13th for an entire summer once and tried to finish it, and I really just couldn't get where to go. I constantly get lost in the game and not know what to do, and by the time I'll start to figure things out, all my counselors are dead. Little over from that, you've got Gargoyle's Quest 2, not an easy game to come by, and a really fun game. It's a sequel to the original Gargoyle's Quest on the Game Boy. Down into the G's, you've got some interesting games, but two of my favorite are G.I. Joe and G.I. Joe The Atlantis Factor, for no other reason than the fact that I am a huge G.I. Joe fan ever since I was growing up. G.I. Joe, a real American hero, G.I. Joe is there. Then you have Gremlins 2, which is a game I really found out about once I started following YouTube and watching YouTube myself. Everybody talks very highly about Gremlins 2, and it deserves to be. It's another Sunsoft game with great music. A little farther over, you've got The Guardian Legend, which is another game people tell me I absolutely need to try, I need to play, and I should really enjoy it, so I'm excited to eventually pick that up and play it. And right on the corner, you've got Gunsmoke, which is actually a top-down shooter done in Western times, and I absolutely love Westerns. As we continue along with the H's, there's nothing really that stands out there in that line for me, except for Hudson Hawk, which was a Bruce Willis movie I really enjoyed growing up, and it's one of the first games I picked up. I picked it up in a huge lot with like 40 games when I started collecting again, and I really haven't played that much of it. A game I had growing up, Iron Sword. And I had it for no other reason than my mom was a huge Fabio fan. She saw Fabio on the cover, automatically knew I liked Nintendo, she liked Fabio, and she picked it up for me. Surprisingly, that box disappeared as well, but I think more than likely she ended up taking it. Little over from that, you've got Jaws, which of course a lot of people saw in Angry Video Game Nerd's Spielberg video saying that Jaws wasn't a good game, but you know what? It's actually fun, and I think Billy from the Game Chaser said this in his NES collection video. It takes you back to a simpler time. It's a very simple game, and it's actually not that bad. Oh, a little over from that, you've got Journey to Silius. I can't tell you how much I like this game. I find it extremely hard, but it is just such an amazing game. Originally supposed to be a Terminator game, they say. It's got some real cool Terminator elements in it, but the music's just fantastic, and the play controls are just fantastic. Yes, one of my absolute favorite games of all time right away, Kickle Cubicle. If you've never played Kickle Cubicle, you're really doing yourself an injustice. It's a really unique, cool puzzle game, really well drawn, it looks great, and it's got some of the most addictive music of all time. I'm sure it's been playing somewhere in the background of this collection video at some point. Kickmaster is another game that I'm told is a hidden gem on the system. I really like Kickmaster. I haven't put a lot of time into it, so I don't really want to give it that classification right now, but Kickmaster's a lot of fun. You've also got Kid Icarus next to it, and I'm not a huge Kid Icarus fan. I always found it extremely hard growing up. The Creon Conquest is actually a very interesting game. It's a Mega Man clone that a lot of people like. I'd advise you should be able to find it fairly cheap, pick it up, and maybe you'll enjoy it too. I kind of like it. The Golden Grail, The Legend of Zelda. One of my all-time favorite games. I love the original Legend of Zelda. I mentioned it in my top 10 video. Whenever I put in the Legend of Zelda, I always completely play it through. There's kind of another reason for that too. That's the same Legend of Zelda I had ever since I was a kid. I did a trade with my friend Joey. Got his copy of the Legend of Zelda. The only problem was I could never get this thing to work. So the reason why I play through it every time I turn it on is because I was never sure if I'd be able to get it to work again. A little over from that, you have Life Force, which is a fantastic shmup. I really enjoy Life Force, like the music. Then you've got The Little Mermaid, again, fantastic game. Right next to that, Little Nemo the Dream Master. That's a really good game, but I really haven't put as much time as I should have into it. Now this is probably my most used shelf out of all my Nintendo games. As you can clearly see, I have the entire Mega Man set on the NES, and I play them pretty frequently, especially Mega Man 2. It always seems to find its way back into my Nintendo. Whenever I want to play a game that I'm really going to enjoy, and I'll try to play it all the way through, Mega Man 2 is the first game I ever think of. I still haven't finished any other Mega Man games on the NES, but I'm going back and playing through them now. Mega Man 3, I know a lot of people find it easy, but I find it really challenging, but I'm still trying to go through. And still to this day, I haven't finished the original Mega Man, which really bothers me. Right next to that, you've got Metal Gear, which I'm determined that one day I'll finish, although I do find it extremely difficult. Next to that, the amazing gravity-defying platformer Metal Storm, which I'm so excited to always pop in. Then you have both label variants of Metroids. I know I'm a collector, it's not really two separate games according to Nintendo Age, but I had to get both label variants. Then you've got Mighty Final Fight, which is an extremely hard game to find, but just beautifully done. I'm a huge fan of the Final Fight series, so much so that I have Final Fight on the Game Boy Advance, on the Super Nintendo, I have Final Fight on the Sega CD, which is, a lot of people say is the definitive version, and of course I have Mighty Final Fight on the NES, which I absolutely love. And then right next to that, you have Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! And I don't really need to say anything about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!. That game is just... it's Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! The next row down isn't too shabby itself. You've got Monster in Your Pocket, which is another really fun Konami game. It reminds me a lot of Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, except with the Monster in Your Pocket characters. It's a lot of fun. Then, of course, you got the Ninja Gaiden Trilogy. Not Ninja Gaiden Trilogy on the Super Nintendo, which I wish I had, but I've got all three Ninja Gaiden games. I really love the original Ninja Gaiden. I'm really trying really hard to get better at Ninja Gaiden 2, but I find the stage effect levels really throw me off. The Wind one, for years, I couldn't get past the Wind one. When I figured it out finally, it was great. But now I'm on the stage where it goes from dark to light in Act 3, and it's just absolutely killing me. Not too much to talk about in the P section. Of course, you've got Platoon, which is another game that absolutely drives me nuts. That's the one Sunsoft game that I can absolutely say I don't really enjoy. Reminds me a lot of Friday the 13th, the same way that you just absolutely get lost in the game. What a weird game to turn into an NES game. Next to that, you've got Popeye, which... actually, Popeye's a lot of fun. It's a cool arcadey type style Nintendo game, black box. I was so excited when I finally got my copy of Popeye. Next to that, of course, you've got Power Blade, which is just fantastic. Everybody should play Power Blade at least once. Predator, I bought Predator shortly after seeing the Angry Video Gamer video on it. I just had to get it, and I'm going for the complete collection, so I had to get it anyways. Lucky to find it. Next to that, you got a game I absolutely loved as a kid. I thought it was the coolest game ever, and SNK do some really good stuff, which is Prisoner of War. Man, I used to play the heck out of this as a kid. I'm determined that one day I'm going to finish it, but I do find the game extremely challenging. Of course, we start getting into the R's. There's not really a whole lot I want to talk about here. River City Ransom is a game that a lot of people say is the best beat-em-up on the system, but I really haven't put enough time into it to really give it that kind of classification, so I can't really say that River City Ransom is my favorite beat-em-up, but maybe if I put more time into it, I'd like it a little bit more. Then you've got the RoboCop games. They're okay, but they're not super. There's actually a RoboCop game on the Super Nintendo called RoboCop vs. Terminator, which is a lot of fun. That'll probably end up in a review for me one day. Plus, it's got a really unique box. Last but not least is a game I really want people to try, which is The Rocketeer. Man, is this game fun. The Super Nintendo version, not so much, but the NES version is actually really fun and really enjoyable. And I really liked the movie growing up. I know it's not the best movie, but I don't know, I just enjoyed it. Now there's some games I really enjoy on this shelf here. First would be Russian Attack. Russian Attack is the NES port for the arcade game Green Beret, and I really enjoy it. It's not your typical game, and it does one thing that really annoys me. You don't use the A or B button to jump, you actually use the up button, which would usually completely turn me off from a game. But you know what, this is not done horribly, and it's actually kind of fun the way it's implemented. It's a very hard game. I've never got past the third level, but it's one I can pick in and play all the time. It's got that arcade fun feel to it. Just over from that, you've actually got Shatterhand, which is another one of these games like Power Blade, Metal Storm, that is considered to be an unknown gem. I remember the first time I ever heard about Shatterhand, I asked my Facebook page which game I should review next, and I left it open for people to make comments. And the overall winner, surprisingly, was Shatterhand, but I never had Shatterhand at the time, so I couldn't really review it. But that one's another one I'm going to come back and look at. Next to that is an unlicensed game called Shockwave, and I think it's done with the same kind of case that Chiller is. Anyways, Shockwave is a game that goes for like $30 I think now on eBay.ca, but I actually picked Shockwave up for $1, complete with manual, from Netherworld Collectibles. For some reason, they just had a stack of like 20 there, and they couldn't sell them, so they put them in their dollar bin. So I'm glad I picked it up when I did, because otherwise I don't know if I'd have a copy of it. Silver Surfer. It really is that hard. There's nothing else to say there. Silver Surfer is actually as hard as it seems. Then you've got the Simpsons games, which I played a lot as a kid. Not because they were really good games, just because I was a huge Simpsons fan growing up, and I was excited to play them. Wow, this is really taking a lot longer than I thought it would. Anyways, back to it. This is another great row with some great games on it. First off, you've got Star Tropics, which I know is Andrew Games' display, one of his favorite games of all time, and it deserves to be there. It's got that top-down Zelda look, it's a fun adventure, one I really hope I find more time so I can actually play through fully in the near future. Then you've got Star Soldier, which is the original game in the Star Soldier series. I really enjoy it, but it doesn't hold a candle to the Super Star Soldier on the TurboGrafx 16, obviously. Street Fighter 2010, a very frustrating but good game, one I really enjoy playing. And Strider kind of feels the same way for me. Then as you move across, you've got Superman, which is absolutely god-awful. I can think of all the iterations of Superman, and getting to be Superman, who was my favorite superhero when I was a kid, and none of them ever lived up to expectations. Then of course you got Super Dodgeball, which is just amazingly fun. It's got the big, well-drawn characters, kind of like River City Ransom and Super Spike B-Ball. I just love Super Dodgeball. Then the rarest game of all time, Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt. At one point, I had I'd say about 9 copies of Super Mario Duck Hunt on this shelf before I took all my doubles out. But there's actually different label variants for that as well. The covers look different. I don't know if it's because they're worn or if they were made differently, but there are quite a few different label variants for Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt. Next to that, you've got the original Super Mario Bros. Then, of course, you've got my very first game of all time, Super Mario Bros. 2, a game that's still very near and dear to my heart, and arguably regarded as one of the best Nintendo games of all time. You've got Super Mario Bros. 3. I'm going to let you in on a secret now. I don't know if I don't like Super Mario World more than Super Mario Bros. 3, but I'm sure I'm not the only person who feels that way. Super Mario Bros. 3 is still a fantastic game. Then a little bit further over the rule, a little bit further over to the left, you've got the exception to the rule of the Disney Capcom games, in my opinion, and that is Tailspin. Because Tailspin is not a great game. I don't care what anybody says. A lot of people probably like it, but I despise Tailspin on the NES. Then you've got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trilogy. The original Turtles, it was actually my brother's growing up, and we always found it extremely hard, but we loved Turtles so much that we would just put so much time into it. Turtles 2, the arcade game, it was the chance to bring the arcade game home. We absolutely loved it. Loved Turtles 2, the arcade game. I haven't spent a ton of time with the Manhattan Project, but it's done the exact same way that Turtles 2 is, and, you know, it's kind of fun, but very misleading cover. Three Stooges is a really, really fun Nintendo game, very underrated. A little further over than that, you got Tiny Toon Adventures, Toki, which is actually a really fun game too. Totally Rad, which I took a lot of flack for because when I picked it up originally in my NES Complete Collection Chronicles, I had no idea about Totally Rad. It turns out it's actually not a bad game, and it's actually kind of fun. Then of course you've got Toxic Crusaders, which I know it's based on that cartoon. I always go back and think of the original Toxic Avenger movie, which was so campy and raunchy, and this is raunchy, but not in a good way. Toxic Crusaders is not really a fun game. Getting a little closer to the end here, we've got the V's and the W's. Of note, of course, is Vice Project Doom, which I just did a review on. Vice Project Doom is a fantastic game, and one I think everybody should try. A little over from that, you got Where in Time as Carmen Sandiego. It's a game that's on the Nintendo. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, another LJN game that's actually not terrible. It's actually kind of fun. And over from that, you've got Willow, which is a movie I still haven't seen to this day, but I really want to watch. Then down on the very last shelf, you've got the end of my games. There's nothing really there that is extremely important to me on this shelf. It's probably my least used shelf, but there is one game that really sticks out for me, and that's on the very end, of course, is The Legend of Zelda 2, Link's Adventure, and in my opinion, it's a fantastic game. A lot of people get thrown off on it because it's just so different than the original Legend of Zelda, but it really is an amazing game, and it's a lot of fun. You just really got to put the time into it and build up your characters. One other game there I want you to take a look at is another Capcom game called Yo Noid, and like the old commercials for the Noid, you really should avoid the Noid if you can. So guys, that's my NES collection up to this point. As you know, I'm just over 400 games. I've still got a long way to go, but I'm just having so much fun collecting. I know this video was probably a lot longer than I intended to be. I hope you still enjoyed it, and I hope that brings everybody up to date on where I am with my Nintendo collection. But however, if you want to know in detail every single game I have, you can check out my channel page, and on the links on the side, I actually have a link to my complete NES collection up on Nintendo Age. So if you want to go through and see what rare games I have, what common games for some reason, if you want to know that, every game I have there is posted there, so please go and check out my collection at Nintendo Age. Anyways guys, this is Michael B. the Game Genie, and I'll talk to you next time. Captain Planet and the Planeteers. Awful game. Awful game. Captain Planet, he's a hero, gonna take pollution down to zero. He's our powers magnified, and he's fighting on the planet side. Why did I do that?